Shalom, family. So today I want to talk about the subject or the topics that you need to dive deeper into and understand, especially if you want to become proficient as an herbalist. So this is when you want to go past just being a hobbyist, maybe making herbal medicines every now and then, yada, yada, yada. And then being more serious and wanting to take on clients and actually see, healing, make recipes, protocols, wellness programs, etc. for yourself and others. All right, so we have about 10 different subjects that I want to touch on. And I just want to make it very clear that it's really important to go past just herbs. Yes, it's called herbalism, and it does revolve around knowing and utilizing plants. But there's so much more. It goes beyond symptoms also as well, and trying to match herbs to symptoms. And so that's why these subjects that I'm going to talk about are not for you to be overwhelmed or anything like that, but also just to let you know just how seriously you should take your practice, especially if you're going to be bringing other people in on the journey with you. All right, so the first one is going to be the anatomy. You need to understand how and where the herbs are going to be working. So you need to understand the structures of the body. And then even more so, you need to understand the physiology, which is the aspect of how the functions of the body. We need to understand the systems, that's the anatomy, putting those two together. So we need to know, I always say more than the what, but we need to know the how and the why and the where. And so by learning those two things, it touches on it. So knowing the structures, knowing the parts, the systems, and then the physiology, understanding its functions and how it actually works. Again, with that, I like to go deeper. And then it's very important to understand the endocrinology. So that is the hormones, and they are really important. So we have organs, and then we have glands, and then we have some that actually overlap. So the organs are just like a collection of tissues that all come together to have a function. So that'd be something like the heart. Whereas a gland is all of those different things that we just talked about, but it also creates and then also distributes its own hormones. So it creates the hormones and then it distributes it throughout the body, or secretes, that's the better word for it. And so knowing this is very important. You need to know, what are the different glands that we have, like the adrenal glands, and then what are the hormones that secretes, and then what do those hormones actually do? Because just putting the hormones into the system, it's not really going to help you to know that it makes these hormones unless you know what the hormones actually do. So there's all types of chemical reactions that happen. So that's why I talk about it's not just important to know the physical, the mental, the spiritual, all those are very important, but then also knowing that hormonal, that chemical, because there's chemical reactions going on all the time in and outside of our body. So we need to understand those three things as well. The next very important thing is nutrition, because it doesn't matter if you know about the body and its structures or what it even does, if you're not giving it the adequate nutrients that it needs to be able to do those processes and do them well. So we need to know about vitamins and minerals, which is why you've heard me talk more about them. And if you are subscribed on our website, you'll see different blogs and different things that I'm sharing talk about nutrition as well. Our protocols, we always talk about nutrition, food things that you can do as well, because we're always eating food, and we should learn to use food as our medicine. And so nutrition is very important. It's not just even about trying to make sure that your intake is proper, but you want to make sure that you have proper absorption. So I talk about malabsorption as well. Then you also need to understand the relationships, because everything is a system, right? There's all different types of relationships. There's relationships between the organs. There's relationships between the vitamins and minerals. Everything that our creator made was good, and he made it perfect, and he made it in balance. And then the thing that he did also, which also lets you know how we didn't just form, poof, and appear. There was no meteorite or whatever crashing down in the big bang and everything happening. No, everything is very strategic, because there are checks and balances. So if there is some kind of, we'll say, error or lapse in the system, there's plan B, there's plan C. The creator is really wonderful. And so just from there being an organ that's compromised or an imbalance somewhere, you're still able to keep going, which is why a lot of times people let illnesses proliferate, because it's not something that dramatically will happen overnight. The body kicks in with plan B, plan C. And so I say all of that to say, with our vitamins and minerals, the different vitamins and minerals actually balance one another. So there are some that help the absorption of a vitamin, and then there's some that also inhibit absorption. Both of those can be powerful. It's just when it's actually needed and when it's called for. And so understanding that balance of vitamins and minerals, it's not just important to know what the vitamins and minerals are, how much you need to intake, what are the sources of the food. I cover all those different things, but you also need to know about the vitamin and mineral relationship, which is something that I delve deeper into the practitioner database. Once I got into that, it's for people who are actually practicing and doing this as a lifestyle to continue learning. And I share tad bits more in there as well, and more in our practitioner database. So nutrition is very important. You can take all the herbs that you want to take, but if you're not getting the proper nutrition, you're just not going to see the results that you want to see, or the results are just not going to be ones that are going to be for a long period of time. So it's just going to be very short. If you're looking at it just from the herbal standpoint, that's very short-sighted, and your results are often going to be also in the short term. And we want long-term, we want actual progress, and we want actual long-term healing. We don't want to have to do what modern medicine does, which is just managing. No, we want healing for long term. We don't want to have to take herbs for the rest of our life or something. And that is what we get when we balance all of these different things in a holistic manner. All right. So the next thing also, and I'm getting more into teaching my students, is about phytochemistry. So like I said, it's not just important to know the what. So it's not just important to know what the actual phytonutrient is. And let me explain. Before I jump into that, let me explain what phytochemistry is. So phyto is just relating to plants. So phytochemicals are just the chemicals in the plants. Phytonutrients are nutrients that we get from plants, et cetera, et cetera. Things like chlorophyll, anthocyanins, carotenoids, the list goes on. But when I'm talking about phytochemistry, I'm talking more about some of the constituents that we see that actually are what give the plants their action. So just as we have a whole bunch of talked about chemical reactions going on, those same things are going on in plants as well. And so what we see, the actions that we see are based on the different chemicals and the reaction that they have in our own bodies. And so like when we look at things like turmeric, you probably heard of curcumin. That's what's actually studied. That's the constituent that gives a lot of the benefits that we see with turmeric. There's things like eugenol that we see and things like clove. There's things like, resveratrol that we see in like red wine. There's pepperine that we see in black pepper. And of course, there's gingerol that we see in ginger. But it goes on and on and on. And this is very important because as I talk about, everything's a system, right? Everything's connected. And when I talk about plant families, what we see across the families is that the phytochemical makeup, you'll see a lot of the same phytonutrients. We'll just say the plant chemicals, the constituents. We see a lot of the same constituents, but we just may see them in different percentages, but we see them across the family. So that means if you are looking for a certain action and it is derived from a certain phytonutrient, constituent, plant chemical, whatever word you want to use for it, that we can often substitute by actual plants in that family. So that's one of the reasons why it's very important. Then also we want to know not only what the plant does, but we want to know why it does it or how it does it. And knowing more and going down on a cellular level can help us to understand the different things that are happening more. All right. So like I said, it's not just good to know it's anti-inflammatory or that it's immune boosting or anything like that. We need to know how it actually does that so that we know how to apply it to certain situations. And everything that I teach is always for real life, for you to be able to apply them like as tools. So what I teach is not necessarily the cool little tips or things like that. I'm giving you something that you can apply to any situation that you have, which is going to be very important. So the phytochemistry is also very important, and you want to learn that more as you become more advanced as an herbalist. The next thing that goes hand in hand with that you will want to learn is botany. Now, I don't get too deep into the botany, but I think that it is important to understand like the growth patterns, for example, and then also to train your mind to pay attention to the different patterns. As I talk about, everything's a system, everything's connected. We have a creator who has his own design. So understanding his patterns will help us understand his creation, right? And so With the botany, we can look at the different structures of the plant, the different patterns, and that can let us know things like I talked about the plant family. But also in African herbalism is really more on observation. So observing the plant, all the different characteristics from the color, the leaf pattern, the veining of the leaf, or we call the vein formation, where it grows, the environment, all of those different things are going to be very important, because that just tells us more about the plant. Like with us, the more you spend time with a person, the more you learn them, their personality, the things that they like, their traits, etc. The same way that we do that with plants. And from seeing all these different things about it, we can get insight about how it reacts in the body. The signatures of plants are things that we're going to learn from looking at the plant characteristics as well. So botany is important to understand. That also helps us to understand the classification of plants. So like the different plant families, the genus, the species, all of that is derived usually from patterns in the botany as well. So we talked about the physiology, but now I want to talk about the pathophysiology. And what that is how the disease actually acts inside of the body, what it's doing, how it affects the body. Now that's going to be important to understand also for understanding how to apply the different herbs for different situations and to different people. We need to not just know what disease or what illness imbalance is inflicting them, but we also need to know how it affects the body so that, like I said, we can choose the right remedies to assist them and to make sure that we have the energetics right. Make sure we have the action right. Make sure we have the affinity right. Those are things that I teach in my TA method. And those are things that are very important to learn when you're making formulations and programs for people, because you want them to be effective. You can be using the right action, but if you're not using, it could be the right affinity. It can be the right action, like I said. But if we're not really clear about the mechanism of the action, how it actually does it, then we won't get the results that we're looking for, or another remedy might actually be better suited. And so if you find that you're making remedies, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It may be because of something like this, not really understanding what the disease is in detail and how it reacts or causes the body to react, and what it looks like when it manifests inside the body. Then you can go further, as I talked about, with the organ relationships. When we understand the relationships between the different organs, we know not only how the disease affects us one area, but how it affects other areas. Because we see all the time, like with diabetes, it's not just the pancreas, it's the nerves, it's the eyes. Sometimes we see it in the limbs, a lot of times in the feet, right? When we talk about lupus, it's not just the immune system. Sometimes we see it on their skin in a butterfly rash. We see also the kidneys that it affects, and all different parts of the body. PCOS, as I talked about, doesn't just affect the uterus and with the cysts. Oftentimes it's on the skin, it's hair growth. Sometimes it's maybe hair loss. There's all different things that are going on, and it manifests in so many different areas of the body. But if you're just focusing on one and you're not investigating further, you don't understand the relationships in one, you're not going to be able to address all the different areas that need the assistance. But also you need to understand the migration patterns. So disease doesn't just stay in one area of the body. We often see how it metastasizes, and then it leaves and it goes in other areas. So we need to understand what that route is that the disease follows, so that we can make sure that we're proactive, and so that it doesn't have to proliferate into that area and then we treat it. We already know that it's going to affect that area, so we take care of it. The next thing is math. Math is not necessarily my strongest suit, but you do need to know the basic math for things like dosage, calculations that you may have. Also, if you have a business and you want to understand, the profit margins and be able to look at, to calculate pricing and different things like that. It's very important also when you're making your formulations that, you understand parts and ratios and different things like that, but also to be able to, when you want to, have exact ratios for your different blends so that you can make sure you repeat it every single time in a system. You're going to want to also understand that math. When you are looking at the dosage and you may want to calculate it for a child or something like that, you're also going to want to learn that math. So math is very important. It's not something that you can just, bypass as well. For the most part, when you're just like doing things for yourself, then definitely a lot of times, but when you bring other people in, you want to make sure that if you make a blend for them, you want to make sure that you can repeat it several times over because you don't want it to be different every single time they get something from you. So that's going to be very important as well. And then lastly, if you want to work with people and you want to do it as a clinical herbalist, going past maybe, no, well, you know what? It's important as a community herbalist as well. So as a community herbalist or clinical herbalist, you're going to need to have some clinical skills. You're going to need to have interpersonal skills as well. You're going to need to be able to and feel confident and also comfortable interacting with people, speaking with them and having conversations sometimes about tough subjects. Sometimes what I like to do is, because some of the questions can be personal, it can have, different emotions that it stirs up. Sometimes people are more reserved and they don't want to share different things. And so you want to, and that's why I make a lot of the tools. Like I said, the practitioner database, the collection, the book collection, the first book, Providing Quality Community Care. The reason why I set up the way I did is because you need to know, you need to create your processes and you need to know everything that you're going to do up front. And then when you bring someone into it, you need to explain that well to them. I like to answer questions before they even have them. Like if I'm giving you a blend, if I give you a tea blend, I want you to know what the directions for how to use it, right? But you might want to know, what are these tea bags made out of? Are they unbleached tea bags? Okay, I'm putting all that in there. Can I reuse the tea bags? I'm making sure I put that in there. What time of day do I need to use this remedy? I make sure I put all of that in there. And that's why I make sure I put all of that in that book so that you know, because these are the things that people miss. A lot of times when I have my students submit different formulas to me, what I see is a lot of times they don't even give you any kind of directions, or the directions are lacking. And so I made sure I put that in there. I made sure I explained what my systems are. I actually included my own forms that I use for my consultations, the questions that I ask people. I also had my own forms that I use that I do for my client profiles, that I keep up with all the different medications, supplements, or herbs that they're using, how I mitigate any kind of risk. And I've never had any negative contraindications when it comes to herbs and drugs, because I do what I call the drug profile, the supplement profile, or it can be the herb profile as well. I do all of those. So I make sure that I assess the risk. I let them know this is how. These are the changes that you will see. These are the first changes that you'll see. And then long term, these are the changes that we're going to be working towards. I let them know what parts of the body we're working on. Why? Give them insight on the herbs. So I have all of these different systems so that for every single person, I'm not trying to put together 1,000 different things. I already have it there. I give different assessments in here. So like if a person says, I feel like I may be exposed to heavy metals. Okay, we got an assessment, you fill it out, and we'll use that and we'll assess, what we think. And then you can go get testing or whatever like that. I have in here tell you blood pressure monitor log. So if a person has high blood pressure and we're working together, you need to have that log so that you're keeping up with your numbers. And then also when I come and I, am looking at and want to assess how things are going, that we have all of that clearly written out. So I have a whole bunch of different things like that you can keep up with so that they have clarity and you have clarity and we feel comfortable. And also sometimes people are not going to be on the same level as you are. So maybe you're very observant, but maybe they're not. And so with having these tools, they can actually see changes that they might have not realized if you didn't give them the space to do those things. All right, so that's just a quick crash course of what you should learn as an herbalist. Of course, I always have resources for you, and you can check those out down below. And I have a lot of this done for you because I've been doing this for so long, and I don't want you to make mistakes, especially if you're dealing with people, because a lot of times that can give mistrust of you and also mistrust of herbs. And it's very easy to lose trust than it is to actually build trust. And so I just want to make sure that we have quality community care that we're giving to people. And that also we know what we're doing. A lot of times herbalists don't have confidence, and it's because you don't know enough of these things. You don't have knowledge and you haven't done enough practice. And so I give with all the different resources practice for you. I have like the workbook that goes with herbal holistic healing. A lot more people should have that workbook, but that's also to make sure that you're not just reading the concepts, but you're also understanding and actually physically doing them. And that's really where the learning happens. All right. So these are the subjects that you want to look at. And there are more than that, but this is just a really good place to start. Resources down for you below. Let me know if this was helpful for you. Share this with someone who also is practicing herbalism and, needs to know these concepts. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.